Thank you, James, and thank you everybody for coming, and welcome to Develop Denver. It's so awesome to be back here after another year, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the talks after this one, of course. And of course, especially thank you for choosing this as your first talk to come to. So, before we get to getting things done, let me introduce myself. So, as James mentioned, I am Brooks Patton. I've been in the IT industry for a little over 12 years. I began by working at NASA Ames Research Center as a systems administrator, doing a bunch of software development type things without actually knowing that I was doing software development type things. You know, automating, writing scripts, fixing other people's code. And then after that, I decided to just, actually become a real software developer. So I moved out to Colorado. I learned all the software development tricks like CSS and centering divs. And eventually I became a lead instructor at Galvanize. So I did that for a few years. And I've decided to exit that area and go back into software development again. And that's where I am currently at Apto, which we are hiring, but more on that later. At Apto, we've been making a software for commercial real estate brokers, but that's not really important for this talk in particular. So let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today. It's mainly about how, the systems that we can use to get stuff done, and in specific, what tools we can have. Like, for example, I may repeat retros over and over and over again. But also the dreaded meetings of doom, interruptions, having fun, and taking breaks, and how important those may or may not be. All right, let's get started. Okay, back to Apto, I guess. So we're a smaller company. We have less than 100 people total, and we have around 6 developers. I say around, it's actually exactly 6 developers, me included. And what that means is that we have so many jobs, so many tasks in our backlog that we're never going to be able to get to simply because there's only 6 of us. And there's unlimited amount of hours of work to get done. So what options do we have? Well, one option that apparently everybody in Silicon Valley has decided to do is just work 80-hour weeks. And to that I say, no way, I'm not going to be doing that at all. I'm going to be working my normal day-to-day because I'm going to go home and I have stuff that I want to get done at home as well. So, let's talk about the systems that we have at work and how we can get things done. Now, how many of us use Agile at work? Sort of, I saw a lot of hands went up and some not so much. How many of us are familiar with Scrum? About the same. So that means those of us who are using Agile are probably also using Scrum. And it's the same at our work here at Apto. And what that means is that we have a whole bunch of positions that are open for us, like for example, the PM, the project manager, whose job is to help get us unblocked, help us be able to move forward. They don't necessarily tell us what to do, they just help us make sure that we can do what we want to do. We have the product owner, who goes through our backlog and makes sure that we have a list of what we want to get done. And also, most importantly, is in the order that we want to do it. And of course, we have the Scrum Master, whose job is to make sure our meetings run on time and don't get off track. In fact, at Apto, we have our Scrum Master who has a timer, and the second that the meeting ends, he's like, okay, we're done, meeting's over. If we didn't cover it, we have to schedule another meeting on another day. We're not extending this one. But you'll notice that I've colored the word retrospective orange here because of how important that is. If we didn't have Agile, if we didn't have any of these roles at all, and we just had the retrospective, we would actually still be able to get a lot of things done. And that's because with the retrospective, at the end of each iteration, we ask ourselves, what has gone well? What hasn't gone well? What should we do next time? We'll choose 2 things. And those are the 2 things that we're going to try next time differently. That way we can grow our system organically with our team over the days, the weeks, the months, and the years. And in the end, regardless of what label we have assigned to how the system of how we get things done, we're going to be able to get so many things done because of that. Now we have this system at work. I propose that we also bring a similar system to ourselves at home. So we have the same organized chaos at home. It may not look quite the same, but if we have family members, then we know exactly how chaotic it can be. So let's talk about the different systems that we can adopt at home. Well, the first is no system whatsoever. And that means that as soon as we just think of a task, we do it, or not. I mean, that's okay. It doesn't matter if we actually do the things, right? Other things is like it happens when we think about it. So imagine that you're driving down the street on your way to go to a meetup talk, and you hear on the radio that they're having a concert giveaway for tickets, and you could pull aside right then and go and call in. But was that the most important thing for you to do right then? And that's the danger of the no system whatsoever, is you can actually get a lot done, but are they the correct things? So that's the no system. Just in time is another system to do, which is the idea, okay, let's complete our tasks and let's do them just in time for them to be due or have the deadline passed. I like to use laundry as just-in-time type example here. So let's say we decide on Saturdays we're always going to do all the laundry right then, which might work 90% of the time. We come in, we spend all day doing 18 baskets of laundry, and then fold them and put them away. But winter's coming up. What if it's going to be a particularly nasty day and we end up having to change socks 3 times every single day throughout the week? We run out of socks by Wednesday. We're not scheduled to do laundry until Saturday. Well, that's a problem. I guess we're going to have to go shopping and buy more socks. But with a just-in-time method, when we take that last pair of socks off of the shelf, we could just say, oh, I now need to do laundry right now. You throw in all the socks into the laundry, you do them, and now you've just done them just in time to need the next batch of socks. It sounds great for a lot of repeating tasks that you have that don't take too terribly long to complete. But there is a negative here. For one-off tasks, there's no real way to know when you're supposed to start them. And some of the tasks are not quite as easy to recognize when you need to do them. So another idea is to sort of start bringing basic agile in. And that's the Kanban board. We could, before I go into that, how many of you are familiar with Kanban? All right, a little bit over half. Okay, so as a very, very quick description of Kanban, think of a board that you have a bunch of sticky notes on, and it's sort of like our schedule that we have. You can move your sticky notes that have all of our to-do tasks from left to right. And it goes from to-do, doing, and done. But more importantly, you can assign your name to each one. So if you have a family and you have a shared to-do task item that both of you or many of you can complete, then you can walk around and see, hey, looks like the garbage hasn't been fully put out. I see one of the trash cans has been emptied, but not these other ones. Well, instead of maybe you deciding to also do that, you could take a quick look at the Kanban board and notice that your spouse's name is on it and it's in the doing section. Okay, I don't need to worry about that anymore. Somebody has taken up this task and they're going to work on that. And that's a really, really good plus about a Kanban board. It's great for organization and for sharing tasks. A negative for Kanban is the fact that it's just a single list. In your backlog of things to do can get extremely long. I don't know about you all, but I often have in plus of 80 things there in my general to-do list, which then makes me not want to do anything at all because it's just overwhelming. The Kanban board does not help in this case. So we have the last one here, which I'm calling home Scrum because I've not actually heard of any ability to like bring Scrum to home yet without just naming it something else. So home Scrum it is. Now we don't have any product owners or PMs or Scrum Masters. It's just us, whoever is in the family at home participating in this method of getting things done. I recommend that we all do those tasks all the time. So we have project management. Well, we're keeping each other free of getting distracted. So if somebody comes to the door in the middle of your spouse's working on something really important, well, you could go and answer that and prevent them from being interrupted. And vice versa, of course. We have the product owners. Well, that is just us going through and looking at all of the tasks that we want to complete, the projects, and potentially filling them into epics, so projects of projects, and then only having the ones that we think that we can work on in the next, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 weeks, visible to us. Everything else gets hidden in the backlog that only the product owner can see. And when I say only the product owner, I mean when you put the product owner hat on, which should probably be only once or twice a week, that way you don't actually have to get overwhelmed by all the things that you're not doing. And then of course there's time to do, which should be as simple as possible. And here is where one thing that I really like that we do at Apto is we use a combination of Scrum and Kanban. So we have product owners who create our backlogs, hide everything away from us except what we want to work on for the next sprint, and then we throw all those tasks into a Kanban board. And then it's Kanban for the next 2 weeks. And of course, once again, in orange, is the word retrospective. Because, again, it's so important. Retrospective should not just be something done at work, but rather, we can do this at home too. We can get the entire family together 1 day a week, maybe even every day if we feel bold like that, and we can ask ourselves, what has been really awesome in this week? What do we want to never ever do again, and what should we definitely continue? Take 1 or 2 of those things. Take our system, we'll take it apart, change some things, tweak the engine, put it back together, and try it again the next time. If you do that, guaranteed, over the months and years, you will get more done than you ever thought possible. Maybe not at the beginning because you have to tweak the system still, but over time, it'll be tuned to your personalities and how you work. Now, those are 2 very high, overarching sort of styles of how to do things. Let's talk about actual time management, because I bet a lot of you are here for that aspect of things. So first up, flow state. This is the state that everybody seems to want to get into, especially these days. Out of curiosity, how many of us have felt that we've been in a flow state? So about half of us. I'm hoping that I can give a few tips to help more of us get into that state. To begin with, I want to say trying to get into flow state is probably the worst way to get into flow state. It is not something that we can actually consciously will ourselves into, but it's a byproduct of a sort of allowing ourselves to just fall into work and not have to think about it too much. So what does flow state feel like for those of us who haven't been able to experience that? It can feel like sitting down to work and 3 or 4 hours later coming up and realizing, oh my gosh, I actually did a lot today, and I don't even remember time passing. I accidentally even skipped lunch for this. If you ever realize that that has happened, you have been in flow state and you just came out of it. It can take some people a long time to drop in. It can take some people seconds to drop in. And also, it's really easy to get knocked out of flow state. My recommendation, if you have been in it and suddenly you're starting to feel a little bit hungry, maybe you need to go to the restroom, you're getting a leg cramp, don't fight it. Don't sit there and no, I'm going to get back into flow state. Because there is no way quicker to knock yourself out than attempting to force yourself along. In fact, if you get up and do whatever your body needs and come back later, you actually might drop back into it pretty quickly. Now, the dreaded enemy of flow state, interruptions. So interruptions are, I think, there's something that is a necessary part of being a software developer. In fact, I wouldn't even say just software developer. In any kind of work with a computer or thought these days. I'm guessing we're getting a lot of morning crowd going in to do food today, but I'll try to be loud for this. Can everybody still hear me in the back? Excellent. Okay. It's perfect time for interruptions too. So, interruptions are one of those things where somebody might come up right behind you while you have your headphones on. Maybe you're deep in flow state and you're debugging your code, and then you suddenly realize that there's this weird heat from a body 3 inches away from your neck. And then you have a heart attack because you didn't realize they've been standing there staring at you for the last 5 minutes. That's actually probably the worst way to interrupt somebody because you give them a nice little bit of adrenaline, which never the best thing to have at work. Interruptions, however, are a necessary part of life because when we have problems and we're coding, well, we can't get into flow state, we need somebody to help us. We need a pair program, and that involves interrupting someone else. My favorite method of interrupting someone else is to use an asynchronous method of communication, Slack. So just send the person a Slack message saying, "Hey, I'm blocked on this item. Can you please, when you have time, come on over and pair with me on it to get me unblocked?" And that's an excellent way to hopefully get their attention sooner. And if you're the person on the other side and you see a little Slack notification come up, it is possible to, without breaking flow state, switch over and respond, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll help you out in a few minutes. I've just got to finish this up," and then break back to your task without interrupting yourself. Now, there is a better way if you can get your organization to cross-train everybody across every single type of task. Because then there's not just one person who is the go-to for, I don't know, databases or SQL queries or CSS. If you have everybody capable of doing everything, not masters, just capable, then you don't have to direct message anybody anymore. You can send a message to the entire team channel and say, "Hey, as soon as somebody is free, can you come and help me out?" That will reduce interruptions across the entire team because there's always times when we do a push to GitHub and we've got a little bit of a break time and it's between tickets. Somebody is going to be able to grab that and come over and help each other. And that's a culture thing that can be grown within the team. And in fact, I highly recommend that. Now there's the one type of interruption I haven't talked about, which is the self-interruption. And I've seen this a lot with developers. Is you run into a problem, you're in flow state, and you Google your problem, and you come up with like a Reddit post. And you have the solution, but instead of implementing it, you get hooked and click on another link. Next thing you know, you're like 250 links into Reddit and you're reading, Wikipedia articles on something completely unrelated. You're still in flow state. You've just changed what you're working on to be something not related to what you wanted to work on. that's a self-interruption, and it's not that great. But with some kind of self-control here, which is really hard to build up, but maybe a Pomodoro timer to like interrupt yourself temporarily and ask yourself, am I still on task? That can really help a lot. Let's move on. Let's go to meetings. So meetings are a necessary evil. In fact, a lot of people hate them with a passion and don't want to go to any meetings. Just let me sit down and work on this thing that nobody else knows that I'm doing and might have massive implications for everybody else. Or maybe that person should have a meeting and let everybody else know what they're working on so they can have input so they don't change the architecture of the app overnight. And that's the problem. That's the reason why we have to have meetings, is for communication. And asynchronous communication is not always the best way, because in-person allows us to have visual cues of our body and allows us to use whiteboards and actually communicate our meaning of what we really want to do. It also allows us to pull in people who might not normally be active in a meeting. So, my suggestions for meetings: if you don't think that you should be in one, that either means that there was no good hook and nobody told you why you want to be in this, or it means that you really shouldn't be in that meeting and you should ask somebody there, is it really important for me to be here? Can I go and do my job? With those two things and a good culture of being willing to ask those things and not be punished for them, you will be able to only be in the meetings that are actually essential. And then the next thing is, make sure you have a Scrum Master who keeps you to task. Don't allow you all to go off. Have a word that anybody can use to stop a meeting if it starts going off track. For example, at Apto, we have cacao. If we start going off track, somebody will scream out cacao. We'll all laugh for about 3 seconds, and then bam, we're back on track. Taking breaks. Taking breaks is perhaps one of the most important things for us developers to do. And so few of us actually do it. Sometimes we'll work right up until the point where our body can't handle it anymore, and then we might be done for the day, and we've only done work for like an hour and a half. With breaks, we can extend our working time for a huge amount. So what I mean by taking breaks is on a regular cycle, like every 30 minutes or so, or whenever we're starting to feel a little tiny bit of frustration from code or a little bit tired, that's when we need to get up, stretch, move around, potentially leave the building, and sort of reset our brains temporarily. The break doesn't have to be very long. It can be just a walk around the block. It could be a trip to the restroom. It could be to go get some food or snacks. But the most important thing about taking breaks, no thinking about the problem. If you think about the problem, your brain is still actively working on it, and it's not a break. It's just you doing your work, not at your desk. If you actually take a break and give your brain a rest, you're letting your subconscious mull over the problem. And by the time you come back around that walk around the park in like 3 feet of snow, you'll probably know where that errant curly bracket is supposed to go. And then we have fun. A lot of people here use fun as a reward. And I say, no, 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 no. Fun is not a reward. Fun is something that goes alongside of work. It is incredibly important for us to be able to turn off our brains from time to time and not work on important things, but rather reset ourselves, regain our energy, do things that really matter to us, and to have fun. And that could be watching TV, it could be playing video games, it could be going on a long bike ride. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it is fun to us. And in fact, if you don't even know how to have fun anymore, that means that you are in such dire need of fun that you've forgotten what it is. So, fun should be scheduled. Fun should be put on your calendar at regular intervals to be worked on. It is essentially a task that gets added to the system, not just something you have whenever you feel like it. Make sure you don't accidentally skip it. It's really important. It's probably one of the most important things to do to help you do more. And that is everything I have for time management. Now I'd like to put it all together to talk about how I get stuff done. So at Apto, I mentioned that we're on an Agile and Scrum system, so I have product owners that are creating the tasks for me. I have some personal side tasks that I also have that are work-related that I can do in between working on tickets and adding new features and debugging. But for the most part, I try to do as much pairing and working with my team as possible. So when I'm looking through the tickets, I'll just grab the top one that I need to, and I'll clear out my entire desk so that there's only one thing to work on. And if necessary, I'll even move to another area of the office that's quiet, and then I'll end up just working only on that thing, potentially with a pair. And I know pair programming doesn't really allow us to fall into a flow state, but flow state isn't my end goal. My end goal is to get stuff done. And if flow state happens, that's a really awesome side effect. And to make sure I get those other things that are important to my work, to Apto, for me to get done, but are not actual tickets that go into our Jira, what I do for that is actually just, well, every time I have like a break, I look at those. Is this now the most important thing for me to work on? And whatever now is the most important thing for me to work on, I switch to that. Then I have how I get stuff done at home. So when I get home, I used to think, okay, I'm going to work on these side programming projects after work. It turns out that just never happens. I just don't work on programming projects after work. What has worked for me is waking up an hour earlier in the morning and getting onto twitch.tv and streaming myself as I program projects. It turns out that I'm able to hold myself accountable through other people, even if those other people aren't actively watching me. And I think that's one of the most important parts of a system here is finding out, and this is through my retrospectives, that I just can't do this after work. So I do it before work. And I pay myself through these tasks and through getting these things done. Now after work, I will do things like process my inbox. So I have a whiteboard notebook that I carry around with me, and I write all of my little inbox things on them. And inbox things are really kind of like the stickies that we use at work, but I don't want to use a billion of those up, so I use a whiteboard. And then at night, I process those. I put them into my own personal backlog. I also decided that I needed to have a category that goes with them, like housework, errands, grocery shopping, that kind of stuff. Because if I just went by priorities and importance levels, I missed the fact that I would only work on one type of thing over and over again, and everything else would just not be done. Which sucks because I'm a homeowner, and if I don't pay my mortgage, I will lose my house. So I switch back and forth. I use an algorithm that I came up with to sort of not track time, but track the equivalent of story points, how much mental energy a task I think is going to take, to always be going back and forth between different categories to make sure I'm spending equal. I have my own weightings that I apply to them, time on each category. And then the night before or the morning of a day, I just choose 3 things that I would love to get done that day and add them to my to-do list. And I try to keep it as simple as possible while in the doing phase, and I'm perfectly fine with having it be more complex during the planning phase. And so I switch back and forth. In the afternoon is more time for family and housework and chores and less mental tasks. And in the morning is time for me to do fun things with Rust. And that is everything I have for getting things done. Just a reminder, we at Apto are hiring. We have several positions open for developers. You can also watch me live every weekday morning at 7 a.m. On twitch.tv/BrookeZerker. And that's what I've got. Does anybody have any questions?
I hear a lot about flow state, and I'm able to sink into it sometimes. Are there actual, either practical techniques or some deeper research we can read on getting into it and getting into it quicker? Or is that something like genetic?
So the question is there any tips, tricks, or resources that we can look into to get deeper into flow state faster? And I'm not sure. I am sure, well, I hope that some people have studied flow state and have those out there. I don't have any resources that I myself has used. For me, it's as comfortable as I can with a little bit of time to get into, but not worrying about upcoming meetings for the rest of the day, and it will just accidentally happen. But I don't have any tips to purposely drop into it. Thank you. Any other questions?
What tools besides Jira do you like to use?
The question is, what tools besides Jira do I like to use? Well, I only like to use Jira at work because that's what we're mandated to use. At home, I have been using whiteboards and pencil and paper notebooks. And in fact, I recently got one of those Rocket notebooks that you can erase and reuse over again because I got really tired of having to shred so many papers. So that's what I've been using there. But now that I've been using my personal system over and over again, I'm kind of building a new one from scratch, using a bunch of different technologies for home. And for a Kanban board, I just like Trello. I think I only got part of that. Yeah.
So how do you deal with being at home, you're working on tasks, and it's just way more mental than you work on one task, and you thought it would be with the next task is the next day, or you just continue working on all of it?
Yeah, so the question is, what happens when I've misunderstood how much mental energy a task is going to take, and it turns out that I just don't have the energy to work on it at all. And for me, it's going to come down to the importance. Is there a deadline? And so this is like the just in time. If I don't do this at all, is it going to be the end of the world for me? Like, for example, if the bill for my mortgage is due tomorrow, or maybe even tonight at midnight, and I haven't paid it yet, and I don't have the energy to pay it, I'm still going to make myself pay it because I don't want to be on the street not having a house. But if the negatives of not doing the job is that, oh, I'm just inconvenienced a little bit, or maybe something else bad happens, I will weigh that and then make the decision usually right then. Oftentimes I'll leave it for a task tomorrow if it can be done tomorrow. And if it's just over and done, I will just throw it away because it's over and done. Thank you. Let's see. Any other questions?
How do you reset rating books?
It's not really a question. I mean, technically it has a question mark at the end of it, but I'm not going to answer that here. That's a one-on-one question, James. All right, going once.
I'll ask another one. So like a lot of the tools do get a lot of resentment from developers, especially like Jira and something. Are there better tools out there than Jira, or is there a better way to get people to buy in and use the tools in a way that isn't so terrible?
So the question is, are there better tools than Jira out there, and then how do you like find and then buy them for the team?
Or even if the tools still suck, how do you make them more sufferable, I guess?
And if you have to use the tool, how do you make it suck less? This is where actually the retrospectives come in. Any tool, like we love to make fun of Jira, but that's also because they're really big and they just try to do everything and they're kind of slow. But that being said, Jira gets the job done for us and we're able to get stuff done. And that's kind of all we really need in the end. I think the retrospectives part is what really, really answers that question. Do the retrospective and find out how can you tweak the tool. Maybe just learning how to use the tool properly is the way to go. But maybe switching to a new one, experimenting, will actually bring a little bit of life into the team and make everybody really passionate about showing up again. There's a lot of different ways to take that. The end is, the retrospectives is where you can find out a lot about that and move forward.
Do you have any tips for making retrospectives more impactful or useful?
Tips for making retrospectives more impactful and useful. First one, I recommend everybody write down their ideas for like what didn't work, what did work, and what to continue, or any other columns that you're using on paper beforehand. That way you don't influence each other or make each other not speak. Then you can have everybody bring up theirs and then have the Scrum Master, whoever is facilitating the meeting, make sure that everybody is having a say and nobody's being talked over. And the last thing is have norms. Have meeting norms that allow you to communicate with each other about how to talk about things that maybe you disagree with. Because somebody might say, I really didn't like when this happened. And maybe someone else really did like when that happened, and a fight can break out. Having a team that can handle disagreement in a very healthy way is incredibly important to a working relationship. So I hope that answered the question. All right, going once, going twice. Sold to all of you.